Still no sound, huh? It says that it's sound. So you can hear us now? Oh,
Okay.
there we go.
So now let's just sit silently.
So now let's just pretend.
Nice.
So we are not off to a great start, but we are off to a great start because I've got someone with me for a few minutes tonight. What you didn't hear earlier was that the reason I was a few minutes late was because of him. We were working. Trust me that what we were working on will be well worth it, the slight delay. The lack of sound, I saw some people asking what Chris did, so let's just roll with that and say that that was Chris's fault. He's not here to say otherwise, so I believe that's the case. That's the case. So tonight I want to talk a little bit about the Centaur and the Moose figure, Aphareus and Alder. But before we do so, Eric, like I said, we were working before he got out of here for the evening. He wanted to jump on. Say hello.
Hello.
There you go.
And thanks for the shirt compliment.
They're very, that's a big hit.
Yeah, before we got on, I was saying that the one day I'm walking in here without a Four Horsemen shirt on, but hey, it's a PowerCon shirt. It's a Nate shirt. It's Nate. So it's within the family.
It is themed.
Yes.
It is themed very much so. So I always start talking about news, and it's crazy that there's no news right now, but there's so much news right now. Like there's so much brewing.
We're making news.
We're making news.
We're planning news.
I mean, obviously, people are getting their Illythia figures. The all-ins arrived. Those, all of them are out. So all of the all-ins, including the international ones, those have been shipped. Retailer street date is this coming Monday, the 19th. So Illythia is fully out there. The vampires and the flock are making their way to collections.
Finally.
Yes, very cool.
It's been a long journey.
It has. It's weird to think that that was a wave that was solicited in November 2020. That was right in the middle of where everything, we were shut down. We weren't here in the studio. Even though G-Con has always been a virtual broadcast, that was the first time that we weren't all together for G-Con.
Yeah, very different feel.
It's crazy to think, though, that we are now, because that almost seems like a lifetime ago, you know, at that point. So to finally have those out, that is definitely a wave that suffered because of some, you know, pandemic issues with factories closing and, you know, short-staffed, and now we're dealing with some shipping challenges. But to finally have them out there and hear the reaction from the fans has been awesome.
Yeah, that's from our end, aside from the fact that, you know, we just don't like selling this product and then it taking so long. It's uncomfortable with that. Like, you know, on a bigger level, it's, you know, when we do this stuff and we see everybody get excited about the reveals, to wait for people to actually have them in hand and to be able to experience them it's excruciating for us in a different way, because it's also very strange for us because we're just kind of like on this alternate timeline, because that stuff was, you know, that was solicited 2 years ago. That means it was being worked on, some of it closer to 3 years ago. So, you know, we're in such a different mind space now than we were at that point. You know, it's weird to think that we're working, you know, on the final of the Dark Four waves, not the final Mythic Legions wave, just to clarify that. That's, you know, that there's lots more to come. Yeah. But, you know, it's sometimes it's like it just messes with our heads, like the fact that, you know, we've been creating figures and we've had access to the leather gloves and boots now for all this time. And, you know, some people are just opening up their package and seeing them in person and touching them for the first time.
But even, you mentioned some of the new parts in the Illythia wave, like the leather torsos, the leather gloves. Having access to those in the library now is a joy for us as well. Because, you know, you start putting together figures and, you know, the expansion that the library has seen over the last few years is, it adds so many more options to build these characters out and really give them a unique type feel.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you think of how long back in the early days with the Colosseums and you know, 1.5, you know, it didn't even have a name at that point, but, you know, the limited number of pieces that we were working with for so long. And then, you know, Illythia was such a major expansion. So yeah, for us, it just opens up the world so well. And even it's one thing once we have the printed prototype versions, but then as soon as we start having plentiful injection molded PVC parts where we can really pop and swap and play and all that, like we're still not used to having access to those parts. So you almost forget that we have it.
Yeah. Curtis is saying the cloth sculpted arms and legs are so fire. I mean, something, we talk a lot about the leather, but those particular pieces, after so many years of armor or bear, you know, the barbarians and orcs versus, you know, the knights and so forth, or the skeletons, to actually have that new option as well is really great
and very, very exciting for me from a design standpoint, because that was developed at the same time that Cosmic was being worked on, and so with the Novian lean figure, you know, I made sure with those parts that they were going to work for Cosmic and for Mythic. And so then to go from a wave that had a lot of space armor in the first wave, then to bring, you know, fabric body parts in and have more of like a spacesuit so early in the line, like it's, you know, it's not just paying off in Mythic, it's paying off in both lines simultaneously.
And that's one of the things that has been super enjoyable about some of the conversations we've been having that we can't get into. But it's crazy how a conversation leads to another conversation, leads to another, and you're talking deep into the future of what you're going to do, because everything is so connected now between Mythic and Cosmic, between the way that a part is developed but has the ability to be used elsewhere. And then for those who were at PowerCon who saw our panel, the idea of these build systems, like the Anthony Halseal had pointed out, the chest plate pieces, those type of systems that are being created, the kind of flexibility and the long-term thinking of these parts it's incredible. And it's everything is building on each other, and there's so much future focused thought process put into this. Really exciting.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of how to say this without like it's doing spoiler, but so in looking at like show figures, like, you know, we do the PowerCon figures, the Legion Con figures, and those are always figures that we use existing parts on. And in some of the looks that we've been taking for those types of figures that are using existing parts, we haven't had the time to use existing parts over and over again yet. And then so some of the issues that we've been having, like I'm seeing them and saying, well, wait a minute, that's so good that could be like, you know, that could be a mainline wave figure. So yeah, I mean, with the Illythia, because Erithir introduced it a little bit, like just getting the bare hands and the bare feet, and the new torso with red shield and some the Magnus
and Vorthog,
that was like the first taste. And then, you know, Illythia certainly, you know, that one like really took it to the next level as far as, I mean, like a, you know, Lord Bardrick figure was a fully newly tooled figure.
Valak as well. I mean, those two figures are almost, I think neck and hips are the only parts on those that, and the two parts that are mostly hidden.
Right. So you take that, and then, you know, last year was a little bit different because it was, you know, we were all over the place in Poxus, where it was some new updated parts for 2.0, which was great because that, you know, we hadn't added to that in a while. But then also we, you know, fleshed out the root scale a little more and stuff like that. But, you know, now we're looking at this kind of simultaneous, we want to build these new compelling characters, but at the same time get these new parts into the mix so that we can build upon it in the future, and, you know, for customers and you know, customizers really can go so far with these new offerings.
And it's interesting because one of the hallmarks of the Legions line from the very beginning was a reuse of parts, a library of parts that could be mixed and matched and used, presented in different ways to create these characters. Obviously, in the early days, I mean, the popularity of the line, it ramped up really, really quickly. So to meet that demand, you know, there were some waves that were released that were kind of an acceleration of what the original roadmap was. So a lot of those early parts got used probably a bit more than you intended them to. But now, to see the growth of the parts and the different kinds of parts that are being used, it's really exciting to see the way that is growing, even just within the Mythic line. But then when you talk about the Cosmic and knowing what the future is for that and the kind of variety that's going to introduce, good days are ahead. Like you said, Necronominus is not that is not the end.
No, it's the beginning.
It is.
But you mentioned the roadmap. I mean, we've talked about these characters before, but I think one of the best like illustrations of what you're talking about is with the horseman characters.
Mm-hmm.
Those characters, I think our plan was back then. It was like I don't even know if it was going to take 4 years to get through them, or it was very accelerated. Yep. And although the core of each one of those characters' designs is still very much what it was then. I mean, I think if you look just at a glance, it's the same as the original plan. Yeah. But especially with Poxus, by the time we got to Poxus, he's at least double the parts that he would have been. Like the original plan for him was to use skeleton arms and armored gauntlets and hands, and I think the Otho tunic torso. So certainly no brand, like I think from the waist up he's a brand new figure. If I'm not, I think he's brand new. And then the new skirt, and all the weapons, even the weapons are new. Like if that would have happened back when he was originally done, it would have been so much less of a figure.
I do have to point out that I love the fact that the cloth kind of tunic that has appeared on a number of figures, you referred to it as the Otho torso.
It's just the first one that popped.
But I love the fact that that's the first one. That you could have said the Templar torso.
It was, and that was not meant as a tease or a to ruffle feathers. That's
every time you say anything, everyone's going to think that there are little Easter eggs that we're dropping, and if we tell them we're not, they think that we're just dropping more Easter eggs. So.
No, that one's not. I mean, there may be some Easter eggs in the conversation, but that one's not. I would not do that, guys. That's not. That's cruel. I'm not Chris.
There are a number of people, when you mentioned that you want to be careful to not drop any spoilers. There's a number of people that gave you permission to do so and said they won't tell your boss. So they've got your back. They've got your back. So really, really cool stuff. Like I said, the fact that, and we talked about this when we did the Illythia reveal in 2020, but the fact that we actually have this full-sized moose in the line is just such a wonderful addition. And at the time, I remember you saying that this was a bit of a indulgence for you because you really wanted to do this, and it was so in a line where everyone would expect horses and other kinds of fantasy creatures much before moose. To be able to do something like this, I think is indicative of the way this line, the way you think about this line, and the way we try to continually surprise fans with items that they won't expect but will delight them.
I mean, we've talked about this for even like some upcoming things, but I think back to buying toys as a kid. I guess it wasn't really even collecting so much at the time, but certainly there, my early years of collecting, and this doesn't happen so much anymore. Partially, just mainly a lot of it just has to do with the fact that everything is covered like on toy news sites and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But as a kid, there was always that feeling of the first time you would show up in the store and like you pick up a G.I. Joe figure and it had the new illustrations on the back, or the first time, this story I've told so many times, but the first time I walked in the Kmart and I never heard of Masters Universe before, and then there's He-Man, and then I look at the back of the package and Skeletor, and then I went in the store and found Skeletor, and like it's like this feeling like in your stomach, like it's kind of like adrenaline rush type of thing. It's just the surprise and the excitement that it's just, you don't find it as much anymore, and especially a lot of things are licensed now, so it's, there's less control over the ability to do those types of surprises. And I mean, it does happen. NECA's been really good about that, like with that D&D Lost Wave, like stuff like that, that completely, like, it's exciting and it just kind of throws you for a loop. And that's exactly, like, if I hope that we can give that to people, and just, every time that people think they know what to expect, and just to at least have one in there that's just like kind of, what happened here?
Yeah, and we think about that because we've talked about this privately, that sense of walking into the toy aisle and finding something that either you were looking for, or even better, something you didn't know existed, something totally unexpected that you like, I didn't even know. In this day and age, that can't happen. It can't happen because actually going to toy stores to hunt things down it's not what it used to be. But also, by the time something gets to store pegs, it's been covered on every possible toy site, on Instagram, on Facebook. That news gets out there so much before you can be delighted. So a big part of what we try to do, like with the reveal specials. So in under 8 weeks, we're going to be broadcasting G-Con from here at Four Horsemen Studios. This is our annual show where we reveal a brand new wave. We think about trying to capture some of that magic so fans at home get to see that. It's a different format. You're not going into the toy aisle and you're not picking up it and walking it away. That's something we can't necessarily recreate, but that sense of delight, that sense of, things being revealed. And with our fan base, they're so informed, they're so knowledgeable that they start to think about what is going to be there. So being able, in some cases, to confirm and or exceed those expectations and then delight and surprise with something like the moose, that's exactly what we're going for. And that's cool. That's great. Yeah. Let's see what the comments are.
Yeah, I see the under 8 weeks thing. You have to stop that. The countdown's terrible for me.
I've had a number of exhibitors at Legions Con say that my weekly 9 weeks, 8 weeks gives them a lot of stress.
It gives me stress. I think probably. No, it probably is. If it's like customizers and people getting their stuff ready, it's the same stress.
Oh yeah, you've got a deadline to get stuff done to be presented.
Yeah.
It is.
My life is a rolling deadline. Not complaining because I love what I do, but I don't look at the calendar generally, and I just kind of deal with it as it comes.
It'll all work out. We're further along than we've been in the past in some cases.
Oh, we definitely, yeah. No, there's no question about that.
So there we go.
But but it also, this goes back to like the digital versus traditional sculpting thing, where a lot of people think, okay, well I say this all the time at my sculpting demos, and some of you may have heard this before, but being able to do things faster on a computer doesn't mean that I get that you get done with your job faster. That means, that's more time that I can add more detail or more accessories or another figure. So yeah, so just the fact that we're further along only means that other things can be pushed further and harder.
I remember you saying that because when you do those sculpting demos, I don't sit in them because I'm running around from room to room, making sure everything's going. But I remember sitting in on one part of it where you talked about exactly that it's not that you get it done quicker, it's that you spend the same amount of time, but you spend it differently. And I remember you specifically talking about like being able to zoom in on parts and add a level of detail that you just couldn't get doing the physical sculpting. And that's mean, you can see that even comparing some of the new parts that are sculpted fully digitally versus some of the earlier parts in the line, to see that level of fine detail that's now being put into it, you can tell the difference between the two of them, and that you're spending the same amount of time, but you're spending it different.
Yeah, that's true.
Absolutely. Trying to see. I think everyone's just listening to us chat here. People are saying that those countdowns stress them out just coming to the show as an attendee. Vampire troll, please make it happen. You do like the vampires. I do know that.
Trolls too.
And you do like trolls too. I'm hoping we get a stag head for the horses. I've confirmed that a moose holds 5 dwarfs comfortably and 7 uncomfortably. Pics will be posted later.
Nice.
Okay. Well, that was one of the first photos that we showed, was, you know, a dwarf like sitting in one of these antlers. I love it. And unfortunately, the half giant and the accessory pack that comes with like the Noble Barch set, those aren't in yet. That's one of the things that we're still waiting on arrival. But I loved it. A while ago, I was doing a show here, and someone asked if it was the same antlers on the moose as it is on that, and we actually had the paint sample. So to put them together, it's incredible how much larger. You're not ready for how big this is until you get it in hand.
Yeah, because those other ones are not small by
not at all.
Stretch.
Not at all. But it's just this. Like, when I get home and have to put this in my Detolf case, I think he's going to have to go on top, because you get a little bit more room when it's on the top of the case versus in the glass case. He's going to take up a lot of space there.
Yeah, you're not going to be able to fit much else in if you put it in there.
Not at all. Awesome. The countdown provides me with how many more weeks I have to save up money.
Different type of stress, but stress nonetheless.
Yeah, absolutely. That is going to be a very exciting weekend, though. I mean, intern for a day, that's always a fun experience. Like, the interns love coming here and being a part of it, but that's the secret, is we really love it as well. Yeah. We love having everybody here. It's for sure total blast to be able to do that. And then we go back a full year ago, where last year we did intern. We didn't plan on having them all back for G-Con. And that was something that I think Walter actually suggested. Because a bunch of the interns were like, hey, where are you going to be tomorrow? Do you want to hang out at the hotel and watch it in my room? And Walter said, hey, can we invite them back here? And I distinctly remember being in the other room and saying, that's actually a great idea. Like, we should totally do that. We have the space for it. So now that they're all going to be back here to be part of G-Con, like, the studio has grown. So there's a number of new people that are here now. So there'll be, more studio members here as well. It's going to be just a huge party. And that's before Legions Con.
Yeah.
That's before everything explodes for the weekend.
Yeah, that's going to be a wild week, because that's, for us, I think you said you're coming in Tuesday, right? Because Monday's Halloween.
Yep. So I'll come in right after Halloween.
And like Nate and Iz are going to be coming out. I don't even know. Like, we'll probably have like our full crew, in the shop. So like, it's going to start at the beginning of the week and then roll probably for some, like, having some people around till halfway through the next week. And I was saying, like, once everybody is out here, and I've got people staying at my house, and so it's as soon as they get here, a conversation starts, and then it only stops for sleeping, which usually that starts at like 2 a.m, and then it's back up the next day, and then it just goes, like, it goes and goes. And like, for somebody to stop to like go take a shower or whatever it might be, like, it's it's exhausting, but it's a wonderful exhaustion. It's I think for people at our age, it's like the closest thing to like college days almost, because it's just you can kind of forget about the outside world and reality for a bit, and you're just fully immersed in your friends and what you're passionate about, and it's a lot of fun.
I've said before that it's funny that because we'll do a full day. I mean, intern is an exhausting day. It takes a lot out of you. But then we'll come back here and we'll be here until, like you said, about 2 a.m. because no one wants to leave. Because everyone has that fear that if I call it quits and I leave now, something funny is going to happen, something awesome is going to happen, and I'm going to miss it. They're going to tell me about it tomorrow, and I'm going to totally regret that I went back to the hotel to go to sleep. So, and it's when we all go to the venue hotel for the weekend, it's going to be the same way.
That's what I said. Nate just popped up giant family reunion.
Yeah,
that's it.
That's literally what it is. You see these people. I mean, I've told this story many times, but leaving here last year, so the Thursday night of intern, after intern, we went and grabbed dinner. We came back here and we got all the stuff set up for the next day's reveal. And I always jokingly say, by we, I mean Joe Vassapolo. Joe Vassapolo set everything up, and we sat at the table and laughed. And not at Joe, we laughed at funny things that Bill and Iz were saying.
We were in a semicircle around Joe, pointing and laughing. It's different than it was like back, like, I mean, we're only, a couple years past that, last year, but I remember on the Illythia G-Con, Sherry, Bill, Nate, myself, were you around at that?
I was here, but I wasn't here that night. Okay. I came in the next morning.
That was pre-Cameron.
Yep.
And so, but it looked like Sherry, had a good sized paint room, but for that many people, it was not a good sized paint room. Yeah. And I was going over to Quick Check at like 12 night, picking up snacks and painting until 5 a.m, and then getting up and doing the broadcast, which was fun in and of itself. But like you're saying, like what's going on last year is Joe's setting the pieces up, but this was stuff that was painted a week, 2 weeks earlier, because now we have our act. Every year it's a little more together, but it had to be done a few weeks prior to send out to Trevor to photograph. So it's every year the vibe and the layout's just a little bit different, because it's things are constantly changing a bit.
Well, that was the one. After we left here, we broke it off at about 12:45 or 12:30. I get back to the hotel shortly thereafter, and I walk in, and there's a group of Legionnaires that are just sitting kind of in the little coffee area, just talking, excited for the next day. And a couple of them had come to intern and everything, and it's like, I can't go to bed right now. I want to go talk to them. I want to be a part of this. So it was up to like 2-something in the morning. But then the next morning, you're just right up again. Like you said, the conversation, it's like it goes on pause and then it just starts up again. So I fully expect that that's what it's going to be like at the hotel at any point that you come in. Like, we're going to be starting to go to bed, and other people are going to be coming downstairs to get in line for the next morning. Yeah. That's literally what's going to happen.
Yeah.
I remember I say that jokingly somewhat, but it's not. I remember at last year, there were people in jackets leaving the hotel as we were getting ready to go upstairs to go to bed, and they said, I'm going to sit outside of the venue. And they were just sitting out there, their little crew of them, waiting to get into the venue.
It's awesome.
Yeah, it's very, very exciting. Hope they sell some stuff online. We always sell the pre-orders online, so absolutely what gets revealed. G-Con, the reveal, that show will run from 10 to 4 during the day, and that'll be Friday, November 4th. And then immediately once the broadcast ends, we always have the pre-order go live on Four Horsemen. So Stuff will be available online, and all the details about what it is, what the price is, how long it's going to run, that'll all be revealed.
We'll figure that out in 7 weeks.
We've got 6 hours that day to give you all that information. So
we've got 7 weeks to figure out exactly how all that works.
Yes, we do. Absolutely. People are saying, not fear of missing out, fear of missing Mythic Legions. Now people are starting to make requests. Land at 6 a.m. Friday, time for a quick 2-hour nap before G-Con. Sounds correct. That's how it should be. Very exciting. So these figures here, so this is another one. Where is it? This is another one that fans were requesting for quite some time that you must have been thrilled to finally get in the line. Like as soon as horses and mounts were introduced, a lot of people were asking about a Centaur. So this is another one, like as unexpected as the Moose was, to be able to get this type of a character into the line as well, popular or a kind of race that, certainly you see in different kinds of fantasies. This is a very cool. When you created the horses, were you already thinking about this?
Oh, no question. Yeah. And I think it won't come to as much of a surprise to a lot of people, but I'm a big Greek mythology fan, and as a kid, I was a huge fan. Like I even drew and illustrated my own book when I was, I don't know, probably like 6 or 7 years old. Like I was so into it. So to be able to, anytime we can get to a character like a Minotaur, Centaur, Cyclops, like things that I gravitated toward back then, it's exciting to me. But then, here it was very cool because, we're not, it's not in Greek garb or like tied in. Like it was fun taking the race of a Centaur and working it into the world of mythos. Yeah. And he was a big part of coming up with this kind of like sub kingdom, I guess, this autumn court that the characters in this wave kind of revolved around within the Zelona's Flock faction. And so there's a lot of the colors and the some of the decorative elements, like in the crowns and things like that, like kind of have like a little bit of their own kind of design language going on.
Now, a lot of attention has been paid, a lot of questions have been asked about the upper torso here. So this is a new size upper torso that we have since referred to as brute scale. It is larger than the 1.0 torsos. It is smaller than the ogre torsos. When you started building this out, did you know it was going to require a new size torso, or was the original thinking that this would be like a 1.0 torso on it?
Before ever getting too far on this, yes, the idea would have been that it would have fit a 1.0 torso. Especially I think the horse that I had worked on prior to this that I was using as reference was Swiftwind for the Masters Classic line. It is a decidedly smaller horse. Mm-hmm. It actually it scales pretty well with Mythic, but if we were going to do a Mythic horse, for on this line, the armor's bigger, the muscles are chunkier, the bones are thicker. There's like certain elements to the design that make it have the sensibility of a Mythic Legions figure. And so the idea of doing a slender horse just didn't really fit. Like it needed to be a powerful, larger than life horse. And then so the drawback to that decision was that we couldn't just pop a 1.0 torso on it. And so I started looking, it's as you're working on it, like I go back and forth, and I'm almost trying to convince myself, well, if I did this, maybe it would work, but it just doesn't. Like, I mean, it does, but it doesn't. And so then I started actually looking at an ogre torso on it, which actually does not look terrible if you transitioned it well, but for a standard issue Centaur, it's not what most people would have in mind. And then so this is where the thinking ahead came into play. It's like, well, if we scale this right, where it's in between a 1.0 body and an ogre body, we've got a nice mid-range body that we can do some new stuff with. So knowing that the brute scale was coming, it made it. I mean, this is certainly low on the totem pole, but for me at least. But it is a factor. I mean, we have to look at the financial of it. Like, if this was going to be a one-time use and we're going to tool this entire torso, we're going to sell enough Centaurs to make it work. But if we can take that and combine it with a lower body and create an entirely new scale of figure, then it makes a tremendous amount of sense, and it adds something substantial to the line. So then it just became a massive win-win. People are finally getting this in hand. We've already built out 3 brute scale figures between the 2 lines. So I'm going to be so interested to see people's reaction when they get a true brute scale hand, and just how they feel about the new size and the new addition to, I always talk about, the lineup. Like, if you broke it down to silhouettes, now you got your troll, ogre, brute, 1.0, 2.0 is kind of in the same ballpark, dwarf, goblin, that range. And I enjoy having it in the line. Like, when we were doing that Grave Knight wave for Cosmic, I originally was thinking that, like, a character like Canox would be a 1.0 figure, but then as soon as the brute scale was introduced, like that was, I was pretty into the idea of him being at a different scale. And there's this is years later on the body sculpture, so although it feels and looks very much like a mythic build, it's got skin texture on it, and it's got more subtle veining and skin folds and stuff like that. So for the Canox figure, or the Callus, the Tharnog, like any of that stuff, like it helps to amp that overall presentation up a little bit by having those new parts.
And I love the fact that the first 2 figures that had the full body you just mentioned were Tharnog, the Orc Shaman from the Poxus wave, and Talazar, the Djinn. Either of those type of characters could have worked at 1.0 scale. But to see them at that brute scale, that's just, Curtis was asking, how tall are they? Well, I mean, if regular figures are 7 and ogres are essentially 9, they're about 8. They're about there. Just that little difference gives those characters a kind of additional presence that really adds to the character itself. Like, you look at Tharnog, and in addition to having the accessories that he has that are much different than the other orcs in the line have, just that slight difference in scale sets him apart. And immediately, you don't even have to know his story. You just look at him and you know that he's got a story that's different, that sets him apart in some way from these other orcs you've met so far.
Right, and it like, if you have our orc figures lined up, like being able to see a Queen Urx and an Urzok together, it's already this nice variety of orcs, and then you throw Tharnog in, and then you start to see that, like humans, there's different shapes, different sizes, and so it becomes a richer race within Mythic. And I think also like just like with Calazir, like the idea, like it in my head always a djinn is larger than a human. It's just got like djinn always has such a commanding presence. You always see them, standing, kind of towering above the person with the lamp, and and so like to be able to, he didn't need to be ogre scale. He doesn't need to be a giant, but having that additional bit of presence really makes an introduction of something as cool as a djinn, but it allowed it to be a little bit more special.
So I don't know if you can answer this, and I'm only going to ask it because it's Braku Prime that asked it, and he's the one that did the video today for the guys for their 4-ish o'clock show. So he says, is there a figure that you would like to revisit from the past with the current library of parts?
Yes.
Fair enough.
I mean, that, they're, like the 1.0 stuff, like from a sculpting standpoint, is probably like 9 years old, maybe. Some of it maybe more. I don't know. Definitely at least like 9 years old. So, generally, just as a creator, you always look back at your old work and look at, I could have done this better. I could have done that better. But with this stuff, there's that, but then there's also like now that like it's also there's literally tools that didn't exist that the options are more open now. So when you look at like the way that we did Attila 2.0, although he still used a lot of the original parts, he's just so much more unique now, and so in the new parts fit the character better.
Yep, they do.
And so I go back through the wave 1 lineup, and I'm still amazed that we were able to not only like create the amount of characters that we did, but even more thankful for, and still sometimes surprised by, is the fact that we got away with it, that people accepted that and were excited about it and happy with it. But now, like, every time like one of these new elements gets added in, it makes me more and more want to go back and revisit figures. I mean, just even like I was talking about before, like just going back to Erithir, where simply just by introducing those bare hands, just being able to give an orc like a bare hand, as opposed to having them all have metal hands. It becomes very tempting.
Well, you're saying bare hands, you're not even acknowledging expressive hands. Because for so many years it was just the gripping hands.
Right.
So not only did you get bare, but you got the different swivels, you got hands that were kind of open. So if you have a character with a sword in one hand, I mean, I love a sword in one hand and the other hand kind of, splayed out. I love the splayed out hands. Those are my favorites. Love those.
Well, it's like for me, again, like think about an orc or something, be able to have that clawed up hand. That makes the character so much more monstrous, just with that one little addition. Or even, the difference between it's like almost like an afterthought in design to probably to a lot of people. But if you think about like the difference between putting an orc with a boot versus an orc that walks into battle without a shoe on, like there's a certain level of like toughness and like kind of savageness to that makes that character read much differently. Or like one of the things that I've like thought about like with our like the different types of magic users is that a lot of the magic users don't have shoes on, and like a lot of the idea about the magic is this connectedness to the planet and to nature and stuff like that. And so it's just this, it's almost this, allows for like the shoes almost like a blockage of like that connectiveness. And it's, those are things that it's subtle, like storytelling within the design, but again, like just having a simple part like that can make all the difference. Or certain characters, you play up the asymmetry, so now you can do one hand armored, one hand not. If it's more asymmetrical than a spiky armored hand and a non-spiky armored hand.
The figure that I think the clawed hands totally transform, if they weren't available, would be a very different look, as Varg.
Yeah.
So I have a couple Varg, none of them have weapons. I don't want him to be holding a weapon. Right. He's got those open clawed hands, and just having him like that makes him look monstrous, where if we didn't have access to those and he just had the gripping armored hands, that figure would have a very different profile when it's on display there.
Well, putting a weapon in a character's hand automatically changes the level of how civilized that character is. So a Varg, if you're able to go to attack and kill with your bare hands, you are at a different level of many different things than a character who walks into battle with a thin saber and can carve things up. And Varg's a great example. And I know George always talks about how much he hates fists on a character, but to me there are certain characters, like CB and I are both huge fans of the Thing.
Yep.
Huge Thing fan. I only want to see a Thing figure or a Hulk figure or something like that with fists. If you want to include the other hands as a second set of hands, I'm happy with it. But that is a character that punches things, destroys walls, punches people. And so just having a variety of hands allows you to, to give the appropriate expression to the appropriate character. Not even to mention, or to give that one character several different expressions.
Interesting question here. Is it harder to create new characters for Mythic or Cosmic?
Maybe Cosmic. That is an excellent question, because it's like with Mythic. I think where Mythic is so established for us right now, we can play off of what's been established. Cosmic is much, some things haven't been as established yet, and another element to Cosmic that you would think makes it easier, and in some ways does, but also can make it harder, is that this is an extraterrestrial world. Aliens are on the table. There's no rules. So on the one hand, we can go as crazy as we want, but on the other hand, it's not like we can, I'm not picking from orcs or dwarves or established character types here. It's just more wide open. So there's more of a self-edit process. And I think some of the characters are a bigger risk because of that. Because it's you're not playing with expectations as much. So maybe Cosmic.
I can tell you that it's a lot harder to assemble Cosmic figures from existing parts, because there are fewer parts to work with.
Yeah, I mean, we're in the infancy of Cosmic.
I mean, but that's a key point, because I think earlier someone asked the question, are there any figures, or which figure would you like to visit using the new library of parts? That was an interesting question, but I think what is more interesting is, what figures would you like to revisit expanding on the library of parts? Because it's great to use the new pieces, but there are some characters that you may want to revisit with parts that don't exist yet. So when you're building new characters, being able to access the current library and figure out what pieces you have and maybe what one or two other pieces you need to add That's a big part of it. You don't have the ability to do that as much in Cosmic yet because of that infancy we talked about.
Right. Yeah, and it's also like I feel like a suit of armor, for example, or a muscle body, you can use over and over and over again, and it doesn't feel quite as repetitive. Whereas like the details in armor so far at Cosmic are so specific. At least in my mind, so far, I feel like it could run its course more quickly. I could be wrong, but that's. But I mean, I'm getting spoiled at this point. The fact that we have the ability to tool more and develop more than we did early on. Mm-hmm. So it, maybe it's just me that it feels repetitive too. I don't know.
They don't mind. They don't mind. The whole George hates fun thing, right? So this is apparently the next one. George hates fists. I like that. I like that a lot. So I will ask this because I would be remiss if I didn't. There's a number of people throughout the comments that were asking questions about dwarves. It has been some time since we've seen new dwarven parts, and without revealing anything, there are dwarves in Mythos. There are different kinds of dwarves and dwarven armor and so forth that we haven't seen yet, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's just that I haven't had a good fit for the characters, like in what we've been doing lately. But there are parts sculpted, things that haven't been seen yet. We're well aware that there's a lot of dwarf fans out there. They're passionate. It's just just finding the right timing. Yeah. And like a lot of the time, the way things get developed, like we didn't have a lot of we didn't have really true like wizard characters or magic users, and then all of a sudden we were able to get to Poxus. Yep. And then all of a sudden there's all kinds of magical spells and things like that. And so it's the way that it's just the way that the development of the line has progressed, where it's like I don't want to like sit down and get into dwarf mode and sculpt a single piece of dwarven armor and then move on. Like if I'm getting into it and I'm doing design work and research and like really putting the thought into it, like I'd rather do a batch of parts and then infuse some really cool new dwarven elements into the line that are a little more carefully thought out and appropriate.
Yep. And appropriate thematically to what we're doing. You said specifically that there hasn't been a place to actually put them. I mean, if you look at the course that Mythic has taken over the last few years, we've had the Horseman waves that are introduced at G-Con, and then we've had the All-Stars wave. And this particular All-Stars wave was the first one that we introduced these brand new pieces. So there have been a limited amount of opportunities to bring these characters in. And that's one of the things that I really get excited about, is being able to present it in a way that is part of a larger story. There is a story arc that is being followed that, there are plans that you're going to get access to this deeper story at some point. But I love the fact that it's not just a checklist of, we need a dwarf, we need a goblin, we need a this. That's not how the line gets developed. But as you said, there's an understanding that there's a desire for that, both amongst the fan base and amongst the creators. it will come around. There will be a point in the story where these different races and so forth play a role that we get to get more of a glimpse and see more of those characters and get more of those figures.
Yeah. I mean, if you think about the way the line, has progressed, like early on, we're introducing the world of Mythic Legions. Mm-hmm. So if we just did whatever knights, not really an exciting start to a toy line. So early on, we got like our goal then was to get the biggest variety of types of characters into a wave within what was realistic with the tooling. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of the way we developed the lines for a while. We were, story was like a little more secondary at the time, and although it was being built up in the bios and the story was set, I think really when we got the Covenant of Shadow, it was the first one that kind of put a little story into it, and then Colosseum I think really clicked with that. Advent then opened back up again because it kind of had to, but with these horsemen waves, we've really zeroed in on the storytelling component, and I think it's the figures have become better for it, and I think the ability for everybody to participate in the story and get a little more invested from that end, it's allowed that opportunity. I think that's why Cosmic has started a little bit differently, because we've it's something we've learned over the years, but it also does set up a situation where we realize like it's been a long time since we've really invested in skeletons. And then you hit a point where you realize, well, it's been a while, let's get back into this and kind of refresh, whether it's a particular race or it's a faction or it's a part that seems out of date compared to where other things are at the time.
I mean, the other thing too is you talk about the kinds of waves that were coming out that had stories. Once the Illythia wave hit, not only was there story involved, impactful story that mattered to this big arc, but I've long said that was the wave that I really felt the tone and the approach of the line changed, because that wave was so focused in terms of two factions, and you got to see a design sensibility carried through multiple characters. So it's awesome. Getting the Advent of Decay wave in, getting my Kickstarter rewards in from that was one of the coolest days I've ever had as a toy collector, because it was equal parts overwhelming and awesome. There was so much incredible variety across that wave. But getting a wave like Illythia and now Illythia, getting that Illythia wave in and knowing exactly where those characters go and they go together, and it creates just such a cohesive new addition to the display. You talked about the Harvest Court. The fact that, I saw someone the other day get their Illythia all in wave in, and I think it might have been Cullen Culp actually, who posted all of the Xylonis flock figures together, and seeing them all together, all posed up, just the design cohesion between everything was so solid. It was great to be able to see that, and that's, I think, a really cool aspect of these new horseman themed waves.
Yeah, and again, and that's where being able to add new parts in, like I think to the Illythia sprue portion of this wave, like we were allowed. I guess we allow it ourselves. Enough new tooling in there where there was a design language that we were able to create between things like Volagars, pauldrons, and chest plate, and the design for Illythia's crown is like 10 years old, but like that set the tone for it. And like we already kind of had the gloss black with the purple and the white skin and all that, but then to be able to set like a a theming to the actual armory of the characters, like it just I mean it allows these characters to become more individualistic, and I think of it from the standpoint of like early on, like we were talking to people about doing comics or thinking about like if this were ever to be an animated series. Like if you took our figures and gave them to somebody doing turnarounds for a show, if you took the color out, aside from a couple of pieces, Gorgo and Attila were exactly the same. So to start breaking that down, I think of it like from that standpoint too, like where they're becoming more individual.
Absolutely. I'm going to show a few of these things because I'm going to show some of these. So one thing I did want to show, we're talking about the different characters. If you don't have the Centaur in hand yet, I think it's worth actually understanding a little bit about how it breaks down, because a lot of people have said like, oh, can I put a 1.0 torso on this? Can I put an ogre? 1.0 torso looks too small. Ogre definitely works, but it's large. But beyond that, there's some cool stuff I think that you can do. So if you pull that torso off, one thing that you should notice here is, first off, this is a horse piece. I mean, this will work. You can use this. And someone asked, actually Nate Strong asked a question on the Cabal, and Joe Vassapolo answered this for him. He asked, how close was the Centaur to Balius? So Joe put together this image here, which actually shows the Balius's head and neck on this body. So it actually works pretty well. The color is not exact, but it's certainly close enough that you don't see much of a difference. And that is just kind of part on part. Obviously, the horse, Balius has kind of the neck collar thing there that would separate that color transition. If you put that on, it would absolutely work. So, I mean, that's a possibility right there to get a new horse in your stable. Another thing that I thought was really cool was this waist piece that it actually comes with. So these parts, this is a loin piece that's got a peg on the back that fits the 1.0 pelvis. This piece here, this belt actually comes off. So this is the part that's going to be used really just on the Centaur, because the way it kicks out, this is meant to sit over, kind of the back of the horse. But this piece here, this will absolutely work on an action figure. And one thing that I did that was kind of cool, I grabbed a silver dwarf, not silver dwarf, the new deluxe dwarf Legion builder that's here. I used a torso, just a 1.0 bare torso. I used those loin pieces I just showed you in that head to create this almost like very woodland dwarven type character. I gave him regular dwarven feet. You could certainly put hooves on him if you wanted. When I get home, I'm probably, instead of using the silver parts here, I'm probably going to use the parts from like Krotos. Not the arms necessarily. I think I have some green arms from an orange steel hide, but like these shoulder pauldrons here, those I think will work really well. Even, maybe the lower legs, I'll paint some dwarven feet. But you could put hooves on him and make him more of a forest type character. I want to go a little bit different than Krotos, but it's kind of cool.
I love it. I had not done that before with the head, and so that caught me off guard when I came in. The fact that it's off of the larger scaled body, that the head looks really oversized on the body, which creates a great combination. Actually, can I see some of it? Can you pull a pauldron off of there?
Off of who?
Off of the Centaur.
Yeah. So the pauldrons on the Centaur they work as well. They're big.
Yeah, they're very big.
Because they hang over really deep.
been a while since I popped this on a you know what though? Is it in there? Oh, my glasses on. That actually, it's pretty good.
Yeah, that gives them a big, bulky look.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
I mean, even this, like, this is wicked oversized. Obviously, it's on a dwarf lower body, but I mean, it's not unrealistic. You know, like if you put obviously an ogre, it doesn't, the ball doesn't fit an ogre, but the ogre would be so big. I mean, you can play around with this. You know, whether it's little additional soft goods or whatever to build out a skirt, you can do a lot of cool stuff with this part beyond the Centaur itself.
He's like a Mythic Legions version of Phil from Hercules.
Yeah, absolutely.
You just need a Danny DeVito voice chip in there.
So the other thing that I showed earlier today, something I'd wanted to do for quite some time, and a number of people have also asked, does the moose head fit on an ogre? And the answer is both yes and no. So the moose is built like the horses are. So the head itself, it doesn't have like a normal, net port underneath it because it's built to go on the front of the head. So if you pull this head off, it's got a different style connection to go on the front of the moose. And the horses are all built in a similar fashion. Now, the one figure that does work like that, put this down, is the Equidron and Shadow Equidron. So the difference between this and other ogre figures, this upper torso, this torso here, that's the same torso that's been used on like the Ogre Legion Builder and Kurzog and so forth. This particular figure came not only with this neck piece, but what you've got in the head here is this attachment. So this kind of adapter goes from the ogre neck ball to what you see at the front of the horses. Because this Shadow Equidron head, you can pop this right on a horse figure and it totally works. So this is what you're going to need. If you want to put the moose head, I think the Shadow Equidron is the one that works the best anyway because of the coloring. But I posted this on my Instagram earlier today. I posted this guy here. So you can see that I used a Shadow Equidron. I did also use some 1/6 scale accessories. I've talked about this before, that when I try to dress up my ogres using weapons and soft goods from 1/6 scale figures, because the ogres, they're not 12 inches like many of those figures are, but the ogres are so bulky, and a lot of 1/6 scale figures aren't as bulky. The combination works. That's all I did right here, is just pop this right onto that neck piece, and by doing that, you can absolutely use the Alder moose head on that ogre body.
It's a striking figure. It's just that the antlers look huge on the moose, but then on here, it's just.
Well, especially, if these two guys walked into a room together, this is a duo right here.
That's what I picture, a mythos like tavern scene, and these two guys hanging out. Like, it's perfect.
So that's a couple of the things that you can do, because the moose and the Centaur are so well realized as they are that it would be really easy to say, oh, they're great as is. I'm going to get my one, I'll put them on display, but those are probably not going to be ones that I customize. I'm going to focus more on Valak and Lord Bardrick and Krotos, because those parts are so reusable. Don't shortchange these. You can absolutely do some really cool combinations with these figures here. I know that this visit that I did to the studio this week was the first time I got to play with the production versions. I've said this before, playing with even the factory paint samples scares me a little bit. So this is the first time that I really felt that I could pull things apart and experiment. I'm looking forward to getting home after my visit to doing even more of that. But even on this show, wanting to show the first couple that I put together, I thought that was fun.
Very, very cool results too. Like that's before a paintbrush even came out.
Yeah. This is total LBC pop and swaps. Absolutely. So good thing you hung out just for a few minutes tonight.
That's what I don't know if people saw me look at my watch, but that was Laura texting me asking when I'm coming home.
Well, we've literally got 9 minutes left in the show. So at this point, you might as well just hang out and finish this up with me. In those last couple minutes, if anyone has any questions that aren't about, are we going to see this? When are you going to do that? We can't answer those things. I mean, we can, but we won't. Any other questions that you want to ask to Eric or myself, or we've got 10 more minutes, hit us up in the comments here. There's, by the way, while we were talking about dwarves, I don't know if you saw the comments.
Nah.
It was dirty with dwarf puns, like just things like I'll find one really quick. I'm not going to be able to find one now. It was mostly Curtis saying them. So let me find one of Curtis is. If dwarf fans want to be heard, they're going to need to step up. Yeah, things like that. Okay.
I don't know if you could win responding to that in any way.
Yeah.
You're gonna get yourself in trouble.
Kevin says he's coming up short on dwarf jokes.
Oh boy.
So Kevin's saying, was the Centaur sword a paint mistake? So we showed the Centaur sword on the website with a gold sword, and it came actually with like the gray, this darker sword. I actually asked Chris about that. Chris said this has been the sword that has been part of the paint samples and masters since day one. So I think this is me, I think I may have posted the wrong image of the sword because none of the shots of the Centaur had him with the sword. There was just one photo of the sword by itself. So I may have posted the wrong photo on the website at one point, but Chris said that this was correct.
I don't remember. I mean, it might have been where you posted it up and then one of the things we try to be very careful of is that if something is in the solicitation, if it goes up on the site, people pre-order it, we try to make sure that that's what folks get. Like I don't like to take the presumption that people will understand or they should have assumed that or something. Yeah, that's not. I mean, if that's what's solicited and that's what people saw and said that's what I want, because the problem is like say 50% of the people, then you just like, it was supposed to be gold. This is what the gold looked like. There's a good chance if half the people who ordered would still want this one, and then, at least, you've definitely got people who are unhappy. So we're generally kind of careful. So that could have been what happened, is where it accidentally got put up, and then once it was up, and because we probably didn't get a painted sample until 6 months, 8 months more down the road.
Yep.
So by that point, it was also solicited by retailers and everything. So, it's not a major difference. So it could have been a mistake.
Yeah. There's a lot of moving parts that it's not unheard of that a little something like that could have slipped through the cracks. Yeah. But I will say this. When I asked Chris if it was a mistake, he was very emphatic in saying this is what it was supposed to come with. So I'm going to believe him.
Yeah. I mean, if you don't like that and you have the elf weapon pack, that sword goes really nicely with it too.
It does. RetroCon is next weekend. I will not be at RetroCon.
And I will not be at RetroCon.
The two of us will not be at RetroCon.
I want to be.
We both want to be.
But
we will be at ToyCon New Jersey in October, and we will obviously be at LegionsCon in November.
And we have a good group going to RetroCon.
Very good
so
group
it's going to
going.
be, it's going to be a fun crew there. So it's still very much worth going. We have good product there and good people.
Let's see. How do you like having George and Chris looking over your shoulder?
No different than any other time I'm here.
What do you like best about having me at your beck and call now that I'm full time? That's Cohen asking that.
Well, everything. I mean, I love that I can, if I need to ask you a question, I can call you any time of the day or text you any time of the day and you're available. So,
I am, yep.
No, it's, something we wanted to do for a while, so it's awesome.
Did Headpacks do well enough on the pre-order that there'll be possibilities in upcoming waves? We don't reveal popularity of stuff like that, but I think it's safe to say that we were pretty excited about the Headpack. Not the last time we'll see that.
No, it's it's on the books for a while and finally got out there. So.
Lord Stephen Bishotti.
Oh boy.
Would Eric rather be marooned on an island with Jim or CB?
I can't answer that.
Neither of them. Jim won't watch this.
So CB. Okay, both. My answer is both.
Let's see.
Anybody who's heard me answer questions like that before knows that I can't narrow anything down to one. So,
yeah. Star, I think we answered this earlier. Are there any ideas you have that you're excited about, but narratively it's not time to do them? Yeah, are there any ideas that you have that you're excited about, but you don't feel it's time narratively to do them?
Big time.
Yeah, it's very, very common. There's a list of things you want to get to.
There's even stuff that we're getting to, and like when you get to it, there's still not enough room for all the ideas and things we want to do.
Yeah. What's your favorite animal? And they're gonna not read too much into the answer.
Here comes the non-committal answer. As far as actual animals to have, it's a pug. But as far as like, just the kid, my favorite animal, like that's something that's always like moved around. When I was a kid, I used to really like gorillas, which still do. Elephants for a while, walruses. I really like. I'm a big fan of just animals, and like I love sculpting them and drawing them and stuff. So I'm terrible at this. I'm a bad guest.
You are not a bad guest. So I'm trying to find the Cabal here. Amazing, I can't find it on my phone. I'm thinking of this because you just mentioned pug. You mentioned before that the goblin that's in Deluxe Legion Builders was sculpted based on your pug. Did you see the person that painted that head like a pug?
No.
It's amazing. I've got to find it for you. If I can't find it on air, I will find it off air. Yeah. Amazingly, I'm in Facebook and Cabal is not coming up in my feed at all, which is weird. Unheard of. Like, it makes me think that the Cabal's broken right now for some weird reason. I'll have to show it to you off air, but someone painted it like a pug, and that head looks like a goblin. Like, I can see the pug influence, but it looks like a goblin until you paint it like a pug, and then you're like, that looks exactly like a pug wearing a little helmet. It's amazing.
I might have to do that. Then.
Yeah. With that, we're going to call it an evening. We both need to get out of here. It's late, and we have people waiting for us. So thank you all very much for joining us this evening. Thank you.
Absolutely.
For joining me for the duration. I'll be back next week, same Mythic time, same Mythic channel, different location. I'll be back in the toy room. See you all then. Gotta find I gotta find the outro. Here we go.